Good Wednesday evening, folks. It's November 13th, 2024. Invest 99L was reclassified today as PTC, potential tropical cyclone. Number 19 in the Caribbean. It is soon to be our next named storm in the Atlantic Basin, which would be Sarah, likely within the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, it's likely going to be a tough forecast model-wise for PTC 19. We've got weak upper-level steering, meaning models are having a tough time deciphering where it will go and when it takes a turn to the north, which is forecast in pretty much all of the global models and even the short range. When it takes that turn to the north will determine whether or not it's a posable threat to the United States or it will be a weaker system as it makes it into the Gulf of Mexico with more land interaction. That would occur if that northward turn happens later and it interacts with the Yucatan. Still a lot up in the air there. I'll show you the scenarios on the long-range models in just a little bit. But it still could easily become a strong storm. It's in a favorable environment in the central and western Caribbean. Very, very warm sea surface temperatures, and that warmth goes down to a depth, so it's got plenty of energy to work with there, even though it's be a slow-moving storm. We'll have a lot of upwelling, and it's still a possible threat to the United States. I'll show you in just a little bit. But here's the latest satellite imagery of it on visible and infrared satellite, I should say. PTC number 19, winds at 30 miles per hour, still moving rather slowly. It is faster than yesterday. It was moving at 2 miles per hour yesterday. Today it is up to 6, but still generally in the same area. There's Jamaica, there's the Cayman Islands, so just south of there, bringing a lot of squalls to that part of the Caribbean. But a lot of this moisture is heading towards Honduras and Nicaragua, and as it is a slow mover, it is going to bring a prolific flooding threat to those areas that will see heavy rain for days. I've seen some model outputs putting up to 2 to 3 feet of rain in those areas. And you see what I mean here. This is the 5-day cone from the National Hurricane Center, and it doesn't cover a lot of ground. Notice here it moves due west. Good consensus there. Look at how tight the clustering is here on the cone. And then you see this big lobe develop here because there's just so much model uncertainty from there. Either it takes its turn to the northwest earlier, favoring the eastern-northeastern side of the cone, or it stays on a westward trajectory for longer, takes that turn north later, more of an interaction with the Yucatan here and would be a weaker system. Regardless, intensity estimates do keep it below hurricane status right up through the Caribbean here, which is interesting because it's going to have favorable conditions for it to strengthen. So it may be an overperformer here, but the greatest intensity it gets is by Sunday afternoon, high-end tropical storm at 70 miles per hour. You need 74 or greater to be a Category 1 hurricane. So here's what I'm talking about with the uncertainty. These are the spaghetti plots for PTC 19. And I mean, they are pretty clustered here as we go out through the next 24 hours, but then you get more and more of a spread, and they're kind of meandering around here in the same general area, just north of Nicaragua and Honduras. And then we go a little farther out in time, and then it gets pulled to the north. When that tug north happens, if it happens earlier, we're looking at it over open water longer, possibly making a threat towards western Cuba again after Rafael made landfall there last week. Or it goes through the Yucatan Channel, stays over open water the whole time. We have a stronger storm emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. That's one scenario here, and then taking that turn to the northeast towards the west coast of Florida. Or a larger cluster that's been developing here over the last 24 hours favors more land interaction with that turn north happening later, moving over the Yucatan, away from the warm ocean waters for a prolonged period of time. So by the time it emerges into the Gulf, it will be weaker and likely disheveled and disorganized by this point. How much it can gather itself and reorganize as it lifts north and northeast and eventually still towards the west coast of Florida is yet to be determined. I mean, we still have the very warm ocean waters there as well, but it will be interacting with increasing wind shear too as it lifts towards the north. So let's look at the model comparison again. The American GFS in the yellow, the European in the red. Here we are Thursday. Tomorrow, jumping out 24 hours. Both show a system just off the coast of Nicaragua and Honduras there. Pretty much both right on target there, meandering and festering over the next couple of days through the first half of the weekend. But here's something that's interesting that happens by Sunday is both models significantly weaken the storm. In fact, to the point that the GFS doesn't even no longer has it showing up here. European is very, very weak. But notice it gets its act together again, moves over that scenario that favors more land interaction, so it becomes a little bit more disorganized, reemerges back over the Gulf of Mexico, and then takes that turn to the north and east, and European redevelops this into possibly a high-end tropical storm, maybe even hurricane at this point. GFS is a little bit more disorganized there and weaker, but both still do put western Florida, west coast of Florida, in play here, again, a week out, next Wednesday. So a lot to watch here. This can certainly change. We could have a weaker storm, but generally the track taking on that northeast turn is a likelihood, but when it takes that turn is still yet to be determined. So that's the latest update for you there on PTC 19 now, soon to be Sarah. If you have any questions, we'll do another update on this tomorrow, but you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, X, and on TikTok. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you on Thursday.